you a woman in medicine feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from the personal fulfillment that you desire? You're in the right place. Join Doctors Joanne and Aaron as they rewrite the rules for women in medicine. Let's begin.
Have you ever waited too long to ask for help? Even when you were struggling, even when you knew you should have been asking for help? Well, you're not alone on that one. I can definitely raise my hand plenty of times, and I waited too long to ask for help. And part of it's because in medicine, we're trained to just push through and do more things. But really, what happens when we wait too long? And that is the topic that I am going to be discussing with my amazing co-host, Dr. Erin Hurley. And we're going to be reviewing why do we do that and things that we can do. So, Erin, let's go straight to it. Let's talk about why is it so hard for us to ask for help?
Oh, that's such a kind of deep question. And there's so many layers to it. And when we think about women in medicine, for us specifically, there may be gender bias in why we don't ask for help. If we think I'm a woman in a man's world, even though more women in the US are going into medical schools in the workforce, many of the areas are still dominated by men. And so if we're feeling like we have to prove ourselves as a woman in a man's world, then we may not want to ask for help because we don't want to show signs of weakness. When we look at cultural bias and generational bias, I've had women that I've coached who had the financial means to get help, say with household cleaning, but because maybe they had a single mom who worked 2 or 3 jobs, raised their kids, and she never got that help, that asking themselves, well, how's that going to look if I then hire help? Or no one else in my family has the financial means to hire a housekeeper. How's that going to look for me? And so sometimes it's peeling back those layers and looking at what's behind this. And I remember specifically asking a client of mine about how that impacted because her mom couldn't get extra help around the house, raising her and her siblings as a single mom. And it impacted her ability to connect with her kids. And so as I coached my client, I said, well, do you want to connect with your child even more deeply than your mom was able to connect with you? And if you have the resources, wouldn't that be worthwhile? So again, trying to shift that lens. And then also sometimes not realizing that others in your same circumstances are struggling with the same things you are. And oftentimes in medicine, we show up with that facade. I'm okay. Everything's okay. I'm not going to show any chinks in my armor. I've got it all together. Can anybody, relate to that? I know that was me for decades. And yet I've heard this pattern over and over again, whether it's me sharing, whether it's individuals sharing on a one-on-one coaching call or in a group session, and they share, I'm struggling with this thing. I could really use some help. And then so many others in the community say, oh, that's me too. I can relate. I feel the same way. And then you realize, oh, this isn't a me thing. This is an us thing, sometimes based on, your culture and the organization you work in, or just the fact that you might be working in medicine or another strenuous job environment. And when we don't talk about that hard stuff that we could use help with, then we don't always open up the communication to recognize that it's a common issue, not just with you.
So important. I think of one of my favorite coaching questions of what am I making this mean? And am I making it mean that I am weak, like you're saying, or that, I don't want, what are they going to think about me if I say that I'm struggling? Or also kind of the avoidance of not wanting to bother other people. I know that keeps me from asking for help a lot. Or kind of that Lone Ranger mentality that we have in medicine of, it's just, and it's not arrogance, but there's a lot of times that we think, it's just easier if I just do it. And then we don't always know how it piles up, how all the energy that we're spending, like you said, when we could be asking. And then saving our energy for things that are more important, asking ourselves the better question instead of asking, should I ask for help? Do I actually need the help? Then asking, would I be better if I ask for help? Or can I do other things if I ask for help? And I'm just raising my hand so high because these are things that I struggle with all the time. I'm sure that a lot of you do as well.
And I'm
And
going to add to
go
that,
ahead.
Joanne, because as we were researching, getting ready for this session, and some of the research says that asking for help can actually increase connection, trust, and performance. I'm going to say that again. Research shows that asking for help can increase connection, trust, and performance, which goes so against much of what we learned in medicine, much of what we might have learned in leadership, much of what we think if we are a leader, a practice owner. But that can actually show that you're a human, not a robot. I say that frequently. There's a human side to being a healthcare provider, to being a woman in medicine. And if we don't embrace that by showing we're human, how is that impacting the relationships that we have with those on our team?
So much that we can dig in this topic. And let's shift it. And Erin, what does it look like to get help? Let's go there.
Help doesn't have to be complicated. I often talk about when I'm getting ready for a workshop or a podcast recording, I'll just ask my husband if he can make my coffee for me. And maybe that takes 3 to 5 minutes off of my day. And when your day is really packed, that 3 to 5 minutes will make a difference. And so not underestimating the power of those little 3-minute increments when someone else could do it for you. Joanne, you alluded to this about allowing others to step up to the plate. And oftentimes we just say, oh, I'll just do that. Whether your MA is running behind and, oh, I'll just room the next patient. Oh, my staff isn't here to escort this patient to the front desk to get them checked out. I'll just do that. And what happens is twofold. Number one, you keep adding these little micro doses to your already way full plate. And then it also can have a negative repercussion because you're disempowering your team. And this can happen at your workplace, such as doing things for your staff because you don't want to take the time or energy to pause and invest in teaching them how to do it maybe the right way, because it does take many times longer, much more energy to teach someone how to do something that you already know how to do than to just do it yourself. But in the long run, that's not serving you. Think of those 3 minutes over and over and over again that you're taking on, that instead of investing 10 minutes, 20 minutes to teach them, then they can offload that off your plate forever. And then you don't have to go back to doing that. And then how is that disempowering of your team, or even the mindset of, oh, they're going to do it. And, you know, it can overlap in your household too. So as the parent of 3 young adults, including one older teen that still lives at home, if me and my husband continually do the chores that he's not doing around the house, then that allows him to go, oh, if I just wait an extra hour, day, whatever that time period is, somebody's going to take care of it for me. We're getting the result we don't want, which is to have our young adult son taking responsibility for what should be his. And so again, that's disempowering him and making it so he's not as reliable or as valuable of a teammate. And what is that doing to his self-esteem? So again, what are we doing to those team members at work or at home? Are we empowering them or disempowering them when we ask for help? And how does that feel when you're the one that's being relied on for your help? And you now feel like a valuable member of the team and part of your success. Let's see what else here. Asking yourself what it looks like if you don't get that help. Kind of what's the consequences if I don't get help on this thing? And you multiply the full picture of that, you know, every day, every week for the full year. What does that add up to? Because the weight of that project, that task, when you're carrying 100% of it, you get one more person involved, and now you could potentially share that load and make it 50%. And a good example of this is when I was running a very complex women's retreat. I'd flown people in, from across the country, internationally, had, I think, 14 different facilitators. It was my biggest, most complex retreat ever. And 2 days before, one of the facilitators is like, "Why are you so calm? Your retreat is in 2 days." And I acknowledged, yes, that's true. And I have an entire team of competent individuals that are there to support me. I'm not owning 100% of it. I have appropriately delegated, and I will lean on each of those members to share the load. So the load was much lighter. And the impact of that was immense leading up to the retreat. During the retreat, I was able to enjoy more of it, and following the retreat, because I didn't own that 100%. So we can use that help in small little ways, something that might take you a few minutes, and in ways that might be a months-long project that can save an inordinate amount of not only time, but energy, and mental and emotional load.
I think it's good to do exactly what you just did, of acknowledging that even though we might get praise for all the things that we do, to say out loud, to be that role model of, yes, and I had help, and I did not do all this by myself. I know that that's been very instrumental to me, to hear other amazing women say that out loud. And it helps with our own sense of guilt when we're asking for help. And it makes me think of, if I can share something personal, of a couple of years ago, going through a difficult time, and knowing my battery starts, like I'm starting my day at a 50% charge instead of my usual 90%, and knowing I can do a lot with that 50%, but I cannot do all the things as I normally do. And I'm there struggling because I had enough in me that I could fake it, right? Like we do so often, of just like that facade that you were talking about earlier. And then asking a better question of, would this be what I would advise, what I would coach someone else? And knowing I can tell the key people in my team that I am going through some difficult times and that I'm not in my usual self. But it took me a while, because I'm thinking, I am the psychiatrist, I am the leader here, I am the well-being coach, I am the one advising on burnout prevention. And yet, even with all of that, it was almost harder. Like, well, you have all these tools, you're not supposed to struggle. And what a horrible thought to have. That would be nice, right? Like, just because we teach it, like it gives you like a certain protection. And for me to say, no, this is exactly when you have to say this out loud, and how helpful it was to know that they had my back, and that I just said, if there's something that I'm supposed to do that I'm missing, can you just please remind me? I might have missed that email, or I'm going to do all the things, but I'm probably not going to do anything extra beyond what I absolutely need to do. So if there's something specific, please just ask me directly, because I am intentionally not doing anything extra. But it took a lot of humbling down myself, if I'm making up words. And again, even with me doing all this work, of then saying, I need to practice what I preach and ask for help, and just saying it out loud took a load off. And I was surprised that they were there for me. They had my back, and right, like that's a big example. And I love your little example of, can someone make me coffee, please? What a gift. And the reminder that those details add up to this beautiful saving of our energy. Plus, it's a gift that we sometimes give to other people, to let them help us, right? Like I say that out loud a lot, because again, I know that that's not, I practice that I am fine, and then be like, are you really?
Well,
Because
and
we're
you're also
programmed that
sharing,
way.
yeah, that we're all human. And even when we're the coach, even when, you're the psychiatrist, even though when I'm the expert in trauma, doesn't mean we are robotic and are going through our own trials and tribulations. And so acknowledging our humanity and using that self-compassion that Joanne and I are so fond of talking about, and saying, of course you need to ask for help right now. Look what you're going through. How are you doing this without the help? Can you talk to yourself like that sibling or that good friend of yours that you care so much about? And when you're thinking you might need that help, show up with compassion for yourself like you would others.
So true. And besides just saying it out loud, what are some specific tools that we can practice so that it becomes a little easier to ask for help?
The first one is that oftentimes individuals are offering to help or support you. And can our default be yes? Why, thank you. That would be fantastic. I would love to have your support on that. Instead of, I've got it. Oh, I'll let you know if I need something. Can we make that our first practice? Is if it could work out and be in your favor, say yes. And you can ask yourself, if I was in the opposite position, would I be wanting to offer help to this individual who's in my shoes? And would I want them to say yes? So learning to say yes when help is offered. That's part one. Number two is always that awareness, raising your awareness and keeping in mind, I think of like the thermostat. Our thermostat as healthcare providers is set so high because we are so smart and so competent and so able. And ask yourself, am I not asking for help because I really shouldn't get it? Or is it only because my thermostat is so high and I can tolerate so much? And what would happen if I lowered my thermostat to that of a normal human being? What if I let myself feel the pain and the overwhelm that these circumstances are causing and recognize, oh yeah, any human being in this circumstance should be asking for help. Therefore, I'm going to ask for help. And so there are some things where you can get help for free from a family member, from a trusted friend. And it can be little things like just, letting a family member make you breakfast in the morning instead of you doing that. The other thing is looking into where other areas that you can get help. Sometimes that means delegating to team members at home or in the office, allowing your family team or your work staff to work up to their capacity, their full capacity, and empowering them to do so, which means oftentimes stepping away and getting out of that micromanaging, perfectionistic person and allowing them to help you in their way. It might be paying for extra support. For example, maybe during this season, you've got a lot going on and you're going to use Instacart instead of going to the grocery store. You might sign up for a food service that delivers prepped food or makes it easier to prep food at your house. You might consider getting cleaning help or landscaping help, like thinking about what are those things that you're doing, even if it's just for a short season. If you have the financial means to get that help and buy yourself not only the time, but the energy, the mental load, look into those things that you might be able to do that you are not doing already. Or maybe if you have a cleaner and they come once a month, what would happen if they came twice a month or weekly? Again, even if it's just for this season. And then the other piece is, are you taking good enough care of yourself for whatever you're going through right now? And that may be things looking at like body work, like a massage, for some people, a sound bath or other energy work. Reiki might be helpful. We talked to Candice Dertholen about her experience with energy work. I'm looking to see which episode numbers those were. Episodes 115 and 116. And then also other support you can pay for, including getting a therapist if you don't have one, or hiring a coach. And if you look at what I call the recipe of your life, it may be the recipe you were using before is not working, especially if there's been transition, a work transition, a new member of the family, a loss of someone, a move. All of those things can change the baseline of what your needs are. And so really looking at what's relevant to my life right now and what's either too much or too little, and how can I adjust that recipe by looking for areas where help can be added.
I love that. And I love what you mentioned of being very sensitive and having the self-compassion of looking at this season of your life. And there's times when we need more help than others, and times when the best gift that we can give ourselves is time. So giving a task to someone else just to open that space can be so incredible. I know we interviewed Dr. Sasha Shilcutt, and she shares how, because she has 4 kids, especially around Christmas, she'll pay a neighborhood teenager to wrap gifts. And we're like, we don't think about it, but I know when my kids were younger, that was like a huge stressor. I enjoyed it. It would have never occurred to me to pay someone to wrap gifts. And there I am always, every single year, the night before, like hiding in my room, of course, when they were younger. Right. And it's even details like that. I, again, in this process of starting my prior practice, I said, well, I don't need help at the beginning. I'm going to be slow. I can do it all myself. And then a good friend of mine, who we also interviewed in this episode, Dr. Janet Lira, she said, she's not a physician, sorry, Janet Lira, she said, you need a secretary? Do you want to hire mine, even if it's just for 5 or 10 hours a week? And she has been a godsend. She has been so helpful. So again, we do the work and we still need these reminders. And what a good topic for us. I think that this is one that we need a tattoo of like, you can ask for help, and recognizing that there's things that are kind of set of why it's so difficult. Like Erin said, the gender difference, the cultural, generational. What are we making it mean? Because we have this belief that we're supposed to do it all, and the reminder that we're human. And the paying attention to what Erin said of the things that we can do. What a concept. Say yes when help is offered, and know that we're giving back to the other person. Think of how good it feels for you to help someone you love. So receiving it is also a gift. And the awareness of when we need it, the small things count. And I love how you mentioned it's almost like auditing your to-do list and saying, what is it here? Like it's an absolute that only I can do. And can I ask for help, pay, delegate for at least some of the other things? So this was incredible. Erin, what else comes to mind that we can add to all the great things that you've already reviewed?
Well, one of our mentors that we mention quite frequently, Brendon Burchard, has a common saying, just because you can does not mean you should. Can you ask yourself, just because I can do this, should I be doing it? And then also maybe do a little test pilot. So for an example, if I'm coaching a client and their spouse is resistant to getting help with housekeeping, bring it up as, can we just do a little pilot? Can we try it for 2 months and see what happens? Because oftentimes you don't know the difference, what it feels like to have that help versus what it doesn't if you've never had that help, or you've never had that help in this season. And it may be a way to do it not with a long-term commitment, but can we just try it out a couple of times and see how it changes? Because it may have a different impact on the spouse than on you for around the house and childcare duties. Those still tend to fall on the woman's lap when you look at what the research says. So it may have a less pain burden on your spouse than it does on you. And so can we get curious and say, I wonder what could happen if we just gave this a try? And then loop back around and analyze. Did it help you in the way you thought it would? Did you get the benefit? And if so, do you want to keep it or try something else?
So good. And celebrate. And I am going to practice what we just talked about and ask for help from you all. If you are finding our podcast very helpful, if you know of someone who might need to hear this message about asking for help, please share this episode with them and keep on listening. And with that, stay tuned because our next episode is coming right up.
Do you want exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with us? Then visit createmeaninginmedicine.com now, where you'll dive deeper into how you can create meaning in medicine. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Connect with us on the website and tune in to the next episode.